Going to start off. I'm going to introduce our guest, Sarah Kesty. She is going to go over in tonight's presentation. She's going to talk about executive function, and she's going to show us a template for how to grow executive function for our students, as well as share coaching perspectives and executive function tools. Now, there will be time at the end. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes where she'll be able to answer some of your questions, and then we will introduce our next event. So our next event will be happening. Our goal is to have these speakers events about 3 to 4 times a year. So if you've been here from a previous event, thank you for coming back again. And we're looking forward to continue to host these events for people to join. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our guest for tonight. Sarah Kesty is an executive function and ADHD coach, author, and speaker. She is the creator of Brain Tools School, and she hosts the Executive Function podcast. She is a 4-time Teacher of the Year. Her coaching and learning program supports middle, high school, and college students in developing skills and mindsets for independence. Sarah specializes in translating research into real-life actionable support, and she regularly writes and presents for education groups and publications, including Psychology Today, KQED, and Edutopia. Her mission is to empower teachers to support executive function development in secondary students. She's an avid gardener. She's a local trail guide, and she and her family live in San Diego, California, surrounded by birds and nature. So it's great to have someone from California who I know many of us joining tonight are from California as well, who is able to join us tonight and talk about how to support our kiddos in their executive function. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Kesty. I'm going to stop share so that she'll be able to share her presentation with us.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Boy, the headshot contrast for what is, I'm just going to get this out of the way. This is not a normal look for me. Oh gosh, now I'm spotlighted. It's for the video for everyone. Look up close. I just had a surgery 10 days ago. So, recovering. Yes, my brain works fine. My body, we're working on it. So I'm sorry if that's distracting. This is not the normal, but I didn't want to cancel on something so important. So we're going to do this together, my friends. All right. I'm going to share my screen. But just in case you thought this was like a cool new necklace, it is not. Just kidding. Nothing cool about that. Okay. That is me. The one thing I wanted to say, I don't want to go over my introduction again because that is incredibly strange to do it twice. But my book, Growing Executive Function for Secondary Teachers, is officially published as of yesterday. They physically arrived at the publisher. So in about a week, I'll have my copies to crack the spines and smell and hold and all the things that you do with a new book. And I'm really so excited because it's my passion to help parents and teachers and even teens themselves understand their brains and why executive function is tricky and all of those things. So it's been a dream and it's coming true, and that's very, very exciting. Okay. Because we got a bit of a late start, we may not have a ton of time for Q&A, but I respond to emails, even in this state. So if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. And if it's pertinent, like, okay, we can't move on without this understanding, I'll grab it right away. Or if it's something that you're like, I don't know, maybe she'll cover it a little bit later, keep track of it, write it down, text it to yourself, do something so that you capture it so that it's not something that's kind of tickling your working memory. Because if you don't, our brains are really good factories. We can produce, we can think, but we're not good warehouses. We don't store very well. So keep track of your questions as we go along. Usually I can kind of stop and answer, but because I'm on a timeline of uprightedness before I have to lay down again for my spine, um, where it's a little bit of a strange situation this time. We're also recording, so if you do share an example, kind of give a general name or general theme instead of specific details, knowing that we don't want to like put a teacher on blast or share anything about a specific kid. I think that is about it because I want to get to the good stuff. All right. So if you have the type of brain that likes to do something while you're learning, that might be fidget. So that might be something like hold something and kind of have an activity for your body to do so that your mind can stay engaged. There's a really cool article that just came out about how engaging some senses can help you stay engaged with others. So having something to hold or move or listen to can actually help when you're trying to focus visually and things like that. It's super interesting. So if you need something to do like that, I mean, even a paperclip, just disassembling a paperclip can become a cool fidget. If you have the type of brain that wants to capture your ideas as you learn, you can draw the executive function tree with me. And normally I would model that, but I kind of don't have the mobility right now. So we're going to envision it as pretty similar to what's on the screen. So if you wanted to take notes of what executive function is using the tree model, it would be a trunk with 3 main branches, as you see here. And then don't add any smaller branches or leaves just yet. Okay. So we've got options. We've also got the option to just soak up the learning right now and then watch the recording later. You've got lots of ways. There's no wrong way to do this. Just start thinking in your mind, okay, how can I make the most of this? What seems the most brain friendly for me? And you can test it out because our kids aren't the only students around. We're students all the time when we're learning. All right. When we hear about executive function, a lot of the times people will say, oh, it's like the conductor in your brain, like making sure all the parts of your brain are like working well together, like a symphony or airport traffic controller or something like that. But it doesn't really encapsulate what it is. So executive function is the set of mental tools that we use to manage life and to get towards our goals. So anything that falls under adulting or studenting is usually executive function. So I'm going to unpack it kind of with the 3 main branches. And again, this is going to be a little bit faster than normal so that we can get to the reading applications. So again, remember, you've got tools to rewatch it, to write it down. You've got lots of different ways to interact with it, but this might feel faster than my normal speed, just as a heads up. So our first branch, if you're drawing your tree, is our future skills. And what this looks like is organizing, planning, prioritizing, visualizing, all the things we do to serve our future selves. So you did a lot of that to be able to make it to this meeting on time. You might have set a couple alarms or had the email that kind of prompted and reminded you. You prioritized setting aside this time. All of those are examples of the future skills that count as executive function. But here's the bummer. Usually we don't notice executive function when it's really solid. We notice it when it's in deficit. So when we are noticing like, ooh, we're having some executive dysfunction in that future skills space, we're noticing that like it's the kid who calls 3 or 4 times a week from school is like, can you bring me my cleats? I forgot them. Or like you can't find your keys, or it's kind of same patterns. Sometimes it's the difficulty getting started on work that they can say that they're motivated to do, and then it's just not manifesting. It's forgetting to turn in work, even though they got it done. Or one of the kind of surprising, I suppose, examples would be this one, working really hard, but on low value assignments. And what that might mean is a kid who has like a multi-component project and who gives so much beautiful energy to maybe like the illustrative parts of it, which are worth maybe 20% of the grade. And then the content part, they don't have the time because they didn't manage and plan well for that. And so they don't get the content points. So they end up failing, even though they put in the same amount of time and focus and effort. So that would be an example of executive dysfunction where it's not that we didn't try, it was that it was a mismatch in use of time and the impact that that time would have on grades. Is this making sense? Yes. Okay. Okay, perfect. And I checked the chat, but we're all good. Okay. So those are our future skills. And if you were drawing your trees, you can kind of add some examples as smaller branches and leave a little bit of room because we're going to be drawing some roots later. But if you wanted to add some of the future skills here as smaller branches, you can, or notes, whatever works for you. Okay. The middle part is emotions and attention. And for this executive function, we're thinking about how am I humaning right now? So right now, a real life example for me is like pain's kicking in pretty hard. So I'm doing a lot of like belly breathing, a lot of like managing, like keeping track of what I'm trying to say because my working memory is trying to capture my attention to say like, hey, this hurts. Emotional regulation is another example of one of the components inside of executive function where maybe we had like a rough morning and then we get to school and we have to kind of calm it down so that we can get into learning mode, or we need to pump ourselves up with energy regulation. Like maybe this will resonate with families. You know, that horrible transition between the chill time after dinner and then go brush your teeth or take a shower, and how awful that transition is because we have to up regulate energy back into like work mode to get going. That's an executive function. That's a spot where it's not a behavior problem or a kid being a turkey. It's that it's asking a lot of our brains to transition from the mode where we're getting some dopamine and relaxation back into something that feels like a job of self-care. Isn't that interesting? Right now, you all are also probably managing your own needs. So moving around if you need to, getting a drink if you need to, kind of adjusting your body so that you're comfortable. All of that is part of our emotion and attention executive function. Except we don't really appreciate it when it's intact. It's just kind of there. We notice it when kids are giving us level 8 reactions to level 3 problems. Or they go like this when you ask them something that you're like, I asked about a cracker and now you're on the floor. Like, I mean, that's kind of more of a toddler example, but big out of sync reactions sometimes is related to executive dysfunction because the part of the brain where we have executive function is our prefrontal cortex. Our brains develop back to front. This develops last. So we're talking like in your 30s, it's finally like done being under construction. It's wild, right? So our kids are going through a lot of under construction moments, which might manifest as really wonky, wild emotional swings, difficulty focusing. Another tricky part is attending to the wrong things. So my favorite example is when I gave a science lesson to a kid that I knew loved science. He loved my class. And I asked him a question at the end, and he kind of like cartoon blinked at me and said, "Oh no, your earring was falling out the whole time." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, honey, you watched my earring for like nearly 45 minutes instead of soaking up the science." because it was just, that's what was capturing his brain. That's where his brain chemicals were reacting to that, giving him the focus for that rather than the lesson. And again, he wasn't being a turkey. It actually opened the door for us to think of, sorry, to think of strategies and things like that. But that's another example. I will say too, and we'll kind of go over this when we talk a little bit about the group work impact of executive dysfunction, but oftentimes executive function impacts social interactions and relationships. So if you think about the assumptions we make when someone forgets our birthday or is late all the time to things that are important for us or doesn't text back, or, and we assume morality. We assume, well, that person just didn't try. They didn't care. They should have. They don't really care about our friendship. Like there's a lot of conflation of morality with executive function in our culture, and that happens to our kids too. And sometimes when they're struggling maybe to stay on task and the teacher gets a bit annoyed with them, that annoyance gets modeled and then taken on by the other kids. And then the other kids start treating the kid like, oh, I don't want to be in your group, or you're annoying, like you're doing too much. So there are, even though executive function is often explored in the academic context, there are outside of academic applications that can be equally as painful. I mean, we process social pain in the same part of our brain that we process physical pain. So isolation, it hurts and our brains feel like that's a threat. So working on executive functions is more than just the gift of being able to like get homework done on time. It's a lot more. It's, maintaining friendships, things like that. Okay, that was our middle branch. Our last branch is kind of where we're going to spend the most on our strategies tonight. And this is the learning and memory branch. You all do this as adults, even though most of us are not technically in school. We still have to work on our working memories. We still have to learn steps and routines and remember them. I sure know that I have like several special ways that I have to like move to lay down. I have to log roll, and I had to memorize the steps so many times before I could do it independently after my surgery. Like that was just a recent moment where I had to kind of prompt myself and figure out ways to keep it in the forefront of my brain, because if I didn't, I could get hurt. So that's just an example of like, it's constant. We're still learning all the time. Processing speed is a little bit controversial. I'm not going to touch it tonight because some people say, oh, you can improve it, and some people say you can't. I would say that you can impact processing speed, which just means like how fast you can take in, respond to information by offloading working memory. So if I'm asking my brain, remember it's a factory, not a warehouse. If I'm asking my brain to hold on to a whole bunch of information at the same time and then do something with it, that's like overload. That's like, when your computer gets hot and it starts kind of hissing, that's will slow down our processing speed a lot. So what we recommend is to think about offloading working memory. So if it's steps that we need to remember, can we make it visual? Can we add a prompt? Can we get it out of our heads and stored somewhere else so that it's a reference that's available that I can see and bring back, but I don't have to work as cognitively hard to hold on to it? Because our working memory is 3 to 7 things at any given time. And when we're talking about kids who are upcoming, like raising up readers, they already have a lot of like word attack and context and the strategies that learning with LearnUp already in their working memory. We want to make sure that things like how to log into their accounts or, where to find their homework, all that kind of stuff is offloaded out of their brains so that they have space to process what they're learning. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you a sec to read through what the deficits look like so I can breathe a tiny bit. And then there's two that I can predict that are not going to make sense. So read those and then I'll explain the two that I think don't make sense. Okay, so again, and it's okay if you're not all the way done reading it. We all read at different speeds. And there may have been something that took your attention and you had to come back. So no shade if you're not done, but for the purpose of rolling along, we're going to move. Um, Again, we're thinking about how do we define executive function with those three branches, and we're in the last branch of learning and memory. When we see these deficits, sometimes we see kids that have a hard time synthesizing information, which means taking it in one space and generalizing it somewhere else. So like, oh, my strategies for reading a science text actually also work for approaching a history text. Or, oh, I can synthesize this into like a chunk that I can remember rather than having to really struggle to hold it. Writing is certainly impacted by executive function because there are so many steps to it. You add in troubles with reading, and I have so much reverence for my kids that I work with that struggle with both, and we'll talk about some strategies for that. The scattered academic approaches just means that they may they may be giving 100% effort, but never with a real consistent approach. So sometimes it's flashcards, sometimes it's rereading, sometimes it's spending a whole time highlighting, but then not actually like we're looking at any of the content. There's no rhyme or reason. That kind of frenetic energy around it, that can be executive dysfunction. And then ineffective studying, which just would be passive. So there's a really good book actually on the recommended reading list that I think Maylin will share with you guys, by one of my favorite researchers, and Daniel Wilmingham. Yes, I think so. See, not that good of a factory, but it's a factory, not a warehouse. And he notes that when we take a test, what we're actually doing is pulling the information out of our brains. Like the test is for us to take it out to show what we know. But a lot of the times the way we study is just to reread. It's just to put it in, and we forget that we have to practice taking it out. That's why flashcards or quizzing each other or taking practice tests are more effective, because they actually get you to emulate what the test would feel like. Not neat. Oh, good. All right. Okay. So what the heck do we do? Well, here are our roots. So if you are one of the humans that wanted to take notes and draw the tree, at the very bottom of the tree, you can add your roots. And the roots are self-awareness, and I would add strategy awareness, because you kind of got to know what they are. Strategies, practice, and reflection. So what this means is we've got to get our kids into a safe place where they can feel okay being vulnerable and asking for help and accepting help and kind of exploring, like, hey, I think I have a brain that needs motion when I'm listening, or I think I have a brain that needs to have different sound to be able to focus, things like that. We've got to give them a boatload of strategies to try, which we'll talk about in a sec, some time to practice them, and spoiler alert, it is not going to go well every single time the first time, because we can't predict how a strategy is going to go. When my kids come to me after at the end of a coaching session, we'll say, okay, we've got like a couple things you're going to go test in your life laboratory this week, and then you can let me know how they go. And when they come back, once in a while, they come back kind of defeated, like, oh, it didn't go like I thought. I didn't do as well on the test. And the only thing I can say for sure when a strategy isn't the perfect outcome like we predicted is that we just weren't psychic. That's it. That's all. We might need a little bit more time. We might need some adjustments. We might not have predicted the demands that would have been kind of competing for attention. We don't know. But I've never met somebody that could not find strategies that worked. If you stick with this cycle long enough and give yourself the grace to be very clunky with it, because I mean, I will be clunky. Even in this recovery, sometimes I'm clunky in presentations and coaching. It's just part of growing. Okay. All right. So what the heck do we do, my friends? Here's where executive function and reading interact. When we have reading needs, this might look a lot like being naughty or disengaged, or, and I'm putting these all in air quotes, non-compliant during work time, which really stinks because oftentimes the result is removal from the classroom when actually what they need is more time and, like, more assistance and a different approach. But oftentimes disengagement is what we see. So it is helpful and at the same time very delicate to talk to the teachers that you think are open to understanding what your kid's going through without mentioning it publicly, so that they know if there's disengagement, it's not a bad behavior, it's not personal against the teacher, it's a different need and maybe a need for a strategy, not a punishment. We talked a little bit about how the group work might be impacted. Oftentimes this means like other kids pick up the work for the kid who's struggling with reading, and then there's some resentment built or some mean comments, or it can get kind of ugly in that space. Sometimes we'll see cheating or compensating. And I say that with as much neutrality as that word can possibly encapsulate, because to me, cheating feels like surviving, and it feels like a kid who still cares enough about their grades and wants to do well and is hanging by a thread. And when we see that, we're not saying like, okay, sweet, cheat your way through school. But that can be the open door, just like when the kid was staring at my earring instead of listening to the science lesson. It can be the open door to be like, man, yeah, okay, you made a choice. What are your thoughts? And we'll go over a couple of different ways to talk to our kids about that kind of stuff. But when I see cheating, oftentimes that's my red flag of this kid's overwhelmed. It still matters to them a lot, and they need something different. Again, sometimes we'll see them use AI, but I'm actually going to talk to you about a couple of AI ideas that can be helpful rather than hurtful. And another thing we might see is protective apathy or avoidance. So what this looks like is I'd rather be seen as bad or aloof than dumb, because sometimes those are the choices our kids feel. And so they're like, I don't care about, even though they're still physically at school and they're trying and their butts are in the seat. So yes, you do care, honey, but they've learned to build up that wall because they have potentially asked for help and been told, well, if you had listened, if you had tried harder, if you had blah, blah, blah. And so they've kind of taken on sometimes that protection of apathy so that it doesn't show the pain and vulnerability that they're experiencing. Yes. So yeah, some Malin, you're like, struggling reading can look like a lot of non-reading behaviors. Isn't it wild? Yeah. Okay. Specifically during the act of reading, when we have executive dysfunction, here's an example: losing our places. So this might be where, like, reading's already tricky. We're already we've fought the 35 bears in our heads to sit down and open the dang book. And we're like, fine, we're going to do this. And then we get to it and the dog barks, we lose our place. We come back and we have to find it again. That's a cognitive tax every single time, and having to re-find their place. Or you may know this from LearnUp, but there's something called return sweep, where we read the line and then you return and sweep back to the next line of the first word of the next line. That's called return sweep. Some kids have a very hard time with return sweep, and so they will lose their place, just like I was describing with attention. And here's a way to tell. Oh, good Lord. Sorry. All of a sudden I'm like, wow, I can't sit up. If there is a kid who reads better with a play, or something that has like really delineated, like bold words and spaces in between the lines, and they can read a play way better than a novel, that might be a kid that's having a hard time with return sweep. And that might be a kid that would benefit from a strategy called Beeline Reader, which I'll show you in just a sec. Obviously, if you're spending a boatload of energy decoding and finding words out of context and kind of trying to hold on to the sentence, comprehension is going to take a hit. So oftentimes we'll see that kids don't enjoy reading because the joy of the story gets lost in the task that they're feeling like they're drowning in. Oh, look, I put cheating on there twice. um, Yay. Yes. Okay. And you're saying this is a lot of what the LearnUp students are going through. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad there's some crossover, because I've got solutions coming at you in just a second. I can't tell you how many times I will watch a kid that probably would have liked the book, but if the annotations are assigned, will, like, sometimes literally throw it in the trash because they do not want to annotate, because it's so much extra work. So I'm going to teach you a hack on that. Let's talk about the good stuff then, my friends. Let's talk about what actually helps. Okay. Here's the truth, darlings, and this is the hard part. We're skill building right now. And in a perfect world, there would be no academic penalty. You would be able to come to school and be like, you know what? I can't decode those words yet, and I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to try and, like, measure my growth, and let's celebrate me. That would be amazing. The real situation we're in is we're skill building and they're constantly being judged and evaluated, and grades don't define who they are, but they are door openers, and they are access points to, like, being able to go to a school dance or participate in sports. And so when we think about kind of the, like, positive approach of, like, honey, we got this, we're going to grow these skills, be careful not to hold on too tightly to the toxic positivity of, like, okay, this is going to be great, everything's going to be fine. There's space to acknowledge it really stinks that your grade's on the line for this, and we're going to use all the strategies we can to help, because it's, yes, like, this is your reality, that sometimes your work will be judged based on skills that you're not ready to show yet. So the good news is accommodations help. Okay. I was telling you about Beeline Reader. It's a extension that you can put on your computer, and then you can also buy, like, a yearly subscription for it to apply to PDFs. Some school districts and a lot of universities have contracts with them. So if your school doesn't yet, you can ask. It's a really cool program. Here's what it does. Beeline Reader will take the text and turn it into different gradations. Actually, you know what, Malin, you did the thing, so I'm gonna show it right now. Is my sharing still on the slides? No, it's not on Beeline Reader yet. Okay, hang on. There we go. Okay, so here's what Beeline does. It takes the text and turns it colors to help so the gradation helps your eyes stay on track, and it helps with that return sweep because the next line is always a different color. So for some kids, you can see a night and day difference in how fast they can read. It comes in different, like you can play with, like, do you want it just gray? My favorite's bright. I like it on there. And you can even get it for emails and stuff. So even for yourself. So that's one example of a cool thing that we have as a potential support. AI is controversial. Whoops, I get that. But a lot of the times there's a lot of studies on poor readers, and I'm using that in air quotes because it feels like a judgment and that's not fair. But when readers have context for what they're about to read, so the study was on like baseball texts, and they asked boys, I think it was young boys, to read a text about laundry and then read a text about baseball. And it was the same difficulty in terms of like lexile level, but guess what? They did better on the baseball one because they were baseball players. They knew the context, they could kind of pull it out. So a lot of my college students will take big chunks of text that they are planning on actually reading, but run it through AI first to grab a summary and key points. And then they have the context, just kind of like that baseball knowledge, the skeletal knowledge in their brains to be able to read it and have some kind of like reference points to help with that, their comprehension. So it's another idea that actually I stole from college students that are awesome. I made and shared an annotation cheat sheet to help kids get started. And I think, Maylin, you put that in in the chat, but I don't know if it's sharing. Hold on. It looks like this because a lot of the times the hard part about annotating is like, what the heck do I write? If I'm already struggling to like read this stuff, I don't want to write about it. So if you have a big list of things that you can write about, it makes it a heck of a lot easier because you can just be like, okay, I'll pick a couple of these things. Or I wonder, this reminds me, make a symbol. And then there's even a couple ideas at the bottom for if I get stuck, how to kind of coach myself through it. And a lot of the times, if you have your child talk to their teacher and say, you know what, the annotations are so dreadful that I'm just not getting through the text. A lot of the times teachers are like, okay, so do half. Okay, so do 1 or 2 per page. Like the goal is to interact with the text. And eventually, if annotations after their phonics and their comprehension and everything is so solid after LearnUp, if annotations are a tool that help and they enjoy them, great, let's do it. But it might be too much cognitive demand right now. So we can lighten the load by having the cheat sheet and by having the potential reduced load if you work with the teachers on that. But wait, there's more. Okay. You can also try body doubling, which is something kind of stolen from the ADHD world of research. But what that means is if you as the adult have quiet work to do and your kid has reading to do, you can partner up and you don't talk to each other. You don't help each other. You just borrow each other's focus energy. You know how when you walk into a library and all of a sudden you kind of like, oh, I got to be quiet. And you can kind of get in the zone when other people are in the zone around you. Body doubling can help. So sometimes when kids are really struggling to get going, they'll just partner up with an older student, somebody at the library, their parents, if that dynamic's not stressful. And sometimes it is stressful. And if that's your case, no judgment. Our kids are designed to start kind of pushing us away so that they can feel psychologically safe enough to move out. So it's normal to not be able to coach and body double with your kid at some point, oftentimes. So don't beat yourself up if that's the case. But that could be a helpful strategy, is to kind of partner up with your kids at some point, can I kind of share that space. Another idea is to really work on making space your ally, because space can make or break the experience and the focus. So think about, like, I had a student who called it the Harry Potter library because it looked like kind of like a magical space. And when she really couldn't focus, she would go to the Potter library, and actually her brain would somehow go, oh, okay, I can do it now. So think about, like, is there a beanbag or a special light or headphones or something that can really add some specialness, but also take away some sensory input, because we don't want competition cognitively from our other senses while we're trying to read. So this is going to sound strange, but some kids do better with familiar sound. So not necessarily music with lyrics. It's hard to process lyrics and visual words at the same time. But some kids can actually focus a whole lot better with music or sound in their ears than quiet. So experiment with what kind of spaces, lighting, and sound would work for them. Couple more ideas. Thank you for sticking with me, because I know it's kind of fast. Oftentimes that we can actually kind of get over the hump of getting started in reading, especially if it's a long text, if we can talk about it and build context. So it's not cheating to watch the movie first. It's not cheating to read a little bit and talk about it together. Whatever kind of sets the scene or gives your brain a job, like, let's read to find out what happened to so-and-so, or let's read to find out how this part is different than it was in the show or the movie. That can help, again, kind of increase the positive chemicals, which dopamine turns into norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is focus juice. So anytime we can feel good about it and feel excited, feel like it's special, we're actually helping our brains focus, even though it feels a little bit silly. Okay, last one on this page. Again, I stole from somebody very smart, and it is this. So there are sticky note flags. I might have some. Oh, I should be careful. I think I have some right here, actually. These guys. So sticky note flags that have like the colors. You can, when you have a text, use the sticky notes to kind of randomly place them, or you can have someone place them for you within the text that you have to read. And each color is associated with a reading reflective job. So, like, for example, red might mean summarize what I read so far, or green might mean ask a question, yellow might mean like take a note. Whatever you find works best for your brain or your child's brain to stay interactive with the text. And plus, because you know you have that job coming up, your brain's going to pay a lot better attention to what you're reading, because you know you have to like perform for it in a little bit, rather than just doing the eyeball movements of reading and then realizing that you were thinking about pizza instead. One bonus, if you're okay with, people have different feelings about using food as rewards. So there's no judgment if you're on the no side. I tend to like it because candy's yummy. Um, but some people will even color code candy with that. So they're like, oh, I get my green Skittle, whatever it is. Dopamine and glucose, again, really help with focus and engagement and excitement. So it's not necessarily like manipulating your brain, but it kind of is in a good way. But I've seen that work even for a lot of college students, high school and college students that have struggled with reading pretty consistently and then kind of come up with their own system in that way. Ooh, jazz music was May's go-to study music. Yeah, it helps. It helps kind of block out because otherwise our brain's job is to keep us alive. So it's going to be seeking the environment for cues that we're safe. And so if there's a weird sound, our brain's going to attend to that rather than our reading because we want to make sure that we're safe. So if we can kind of obviously be physically in a safe space and then kind of unplug a little bit on that sensory stuff, it can help a whole bunch. Okay, darlings. We are okay. I am at my time where I'm probably not supposed to be sitting up any longer. My neck hurts. So I know we got like a late start. Malin, how do you want to? I have perspectives and things like that they will have for slides that I shared with you all. Is that enough? Do you want to, how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, so we will be sharing this presentation with everyone afterwards, as well as a recording of this. If there are any other, for example, resources that you would like to share, um, you can send that to us and we'll share them out with everyone. And if anyone who is participating today has any lingering questions, they can email us and we'll um, forward that to you and we'll make sure it gets addressed. But yeah, please go ahead and take a break. Thank you so
Sorry.
much for being here today. I feel like I've certainly learned a lot. And I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone else as well. Where taking a lot of things that I feel like we can incorporate personally into our own lives, but that we can use for our students as well. So yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
definitely. And I'll just leave you with the parting bit, two things. That's a newsletter sign up if you wanted to. There's no pressure. You do not have to. And I just want to leave you with a little Emmy stories. That's my niece, Emmy. And she called me during the pandemic and she was so excited because she learned how to swallow pills. And she said, no joke, you guys, she said, Auntie, it only took me 67 tries. And I said, and first of all, I'm like, that's very on track for Emmy to count 67 tries. Knowing this kid, it makes sense. She probably did telemarks. And also, how cool was it that she stuck for 67 times with herself? So, what I want to impart for you is a little bit of Emmy magic. What would happen if we stuck with ourselves 67 times? Like, what could we master if we were that patient and like excited? Like, it wasn't 70, it was 67. So I'll leave you with that, Emmy love. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm sorry that it's, a little wonky with surgery neck, but I'm glad to have you all here.
Thank you,
So
Sam.
thank you so much. And just to take 2 minutes while everyone is still here, we will be having a next event in November where we'll be bringing in a special education advocate, Dr. Jeremy um, Henderson from Aluminum Minds. So you will all get a link to sign up for that as well. So that's really exciting. And if you guys have any lingering questions for LearnUp or for Sarah, you can contact us. We'll make sure it's forwarded to Sarah. And all the slides, resources, and the recording from tonight will be shared with all of you here and anyone who has signed up at our RSVP link. So yeah, thank you all for being here, and I hope you guys have a nice night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.